I feel like a lot of people start off meeting and webinars by saying, super excited to be here, but truly really excited to be here. I've been a part of the team over here at SmartSuite for a few months now and learning quite a bit as I go, but taking my experience in no code and applying it directly to this awesome, amazing team on this end. Before I jump into everything, just to set the agenda here, I'll give a quick introduction into who I am and I guess the sort of alignment issues at times, or just the concepts of sales ops and sales reps working together. And then I'll lightly touch on what great could look like with no code, specifically SmartSuite, right? Hey, I'm Jeff. So as well as being a no code nerd, hobbyist, and platform tinkerer, I'm our first customer facing sales hire here at SmartSuite. When thinking about how to explain my role and what I care deeply about, I did what anyone else in my position would. And I asked ChatGPT. And what I asked was what a first sales hire at a fast growing no code software company should do during their first year. And I actually think it aligns exactly with what I've been doing. And I think the bullet points really are just pushing to develop a deep understanding of the product, identify and prioritize target customers, build a pipeline, create and refine our process, establish metrics and reporting, and then provide that feedback to our product team to make sure that we're in alignment with what our customers care about. And I think we're going to be able to touch on a lot of that today. Like I mentioned earlier, I build things to streamline my individual motion, but any salesperson should always be pushing to have their ideal process work in harmony with the broader vision of what sales ops is pushing forward. And so as we talk about sales ops, let's talk about what they really care about as well. So a few pillars of what sales ops really cares about: sales planning, so goals, objectives, forecasts, plans for achievement. I'll stop there and say, if I have any rev ops or sales ops folks attending today, feel free to correct me in the chat along the way. I've always been closely aligned with sales ops peers of mine throughout my career, but there's always a big difference between an operationally minded salesperson like myself and a sales-minded ops specialist. But again, at a high level, these are the pillars. The sales process, as far as going from lead gen to closed, like the process change management piece, if the business needs to shift in any way, sales analytics, what do the conversion rates look like? Win-loss rates, growth, where's the story that lies in the data? And then sales tech management. Obviously, a CRM platform is going to be involved there, but enablement, productivity tools, and then the key piece, obviously, bolded and underlined, adoption. And so in order to harvest any sort of analytics, in order to get any sort of refined sales process that people actually have to stick to, you need to be able to drive adoption of some kind of tool uniformly across the entire sales org. And in that way, you can actually effectively plan. Everything rolls from or stems from this concept of adoption. And who do you need to adopt the tools? Our salespeople. And so oftentimes, and this is not all the time, I'll say oftentimes, sales impression of this, is this for them or is it for us? And so specific to CRM and analytics, is this like a big brother motion, or is it actually truly a sales enabler? When you're talking about this defined process all the way from lead gen to closed won or closed lost, is this based on theory or is this based on actually what's worked over time? And then for forecasting and planning, is this concerning helping me get to my number, or is this about getting to leadership's number? And so there oftentimes can tend to be like a mistrust between the two. And the goal obviously is always to have them working cohesively, but how do we make that happen? I've worked for a number of different sales orgs now at this point, both brand new, mature. What I've seen done really well in the past is like this give get for adoption. And when I go through my product demonstration, I'll show what I could do from an individual contributor standpoint. And I have the flexibility to be able to automate certain pieces of what I'm doing. But at the same time, I'm still sticking to this rigid ops structure and tracking my activities. We're going to have clearly defined stages and forecast categories, and then workflows for actually being able to request ops review or management review, whatever that could look like. The automating activity tracking, you can see here, I have the tools to represent the get for ops, but then the money bag for the sales side is being able to just make it as easy as possible. I think a lot of great salespeople are amazing in customer conversations, amazing at telling the story, amazing at being able to connect the pain with the value add the solution provides. And so any way that you can actually automate the creation of activity, being able to track what exactly happened and having that tie directly to the op is absolutely so helpful for every salesperson. And obviously you want to have these stages update with best practices in mind. You don't want people just moving them from stage to stage based on the forecast call that they have on Friday. You want them to actually have a solidified reason as to why it's going into that next stage. And then you want to be able to lock that progression. And so by setting prerequisites, you want to be able to have milestone dates like, hey, why are we moving into the stage after discovery if we don't even have a logged discovery call yet with a timestamp for when that happened? The revenue implications. We're going into a proposal delivery stage, but we don't even have actually mapped out in the CRM yet at this point. You haven't updated what this opportunity value even is. And then as far as especially relevant to the position that SmartSuite is in and a lot of the customers that we were serving is we're innovating and building something that's very new to the market. And so being able to tell the story of why we won and potentially even more importantly, why we lost, not being able to move into those stages until you've given clear notes, structured however it is that the ops team finds useful or that they can actually make or gather insights from. But yeah, requiring those before they can actually move into those closed stages. And once adoption is achieved, being able to coach to the data that's actually being sourced allows for that harmony. It's one thing to say, hey, you're not using this sales methodology that we've adopted as a company, and we feel like it's actually hurting your ability to sell. Any seller, especially an experienced seller in their minds, is going to say, I've been doing this for a while. I've been very successful. I don't need to adopt this methodology or even like the verbiage or specific language that the company wants me to use. But the moment you have maybe we use an AI voice tracking or a language tracking tool that can pick up on the fact that deals in which language is being used and that's specific to the methodology that they are adhering to increases the win rate for that for opportunities by 35%, let's say, at that moment that you're actually speaking to the data that you're bringing in and consolidating within your CRM, at that point, there's really no way to be able to combat that. Is sales enabler, not just coaching to theory. I'm going to show you ways in which you can automate activity tracking, follow-up emails, discount review requests, and a lot more. But I also want to note it's directly tied to a CRM that lives in SmartSuite. And so while automation and organization is great, disconnected workflows lead to silo. And now we've just replaced an inefficiency issue with a data sprawl problem. And so as I go through today's demo, keep in mind that we have the ability to automate push actions natively in SmartSuite to third-party tools like Salesforce, HubSpot, Twilio, Slack, and a lot more. But if you're looking for sort of that two-way flow of data, our partners at Make.com and Zapier are amazing for being able to connect to most any of the tools that your organization is using for centralizing such information. Also, the session is meant to inspire creativity in your workflows. And if it does, feel free to reach out to one of our team members on our end to be able to talk about implementing something similar for your group. We have Sales CRM, we have our list of accounts that are linked over to various opportunities, various contacts. And so as we look at the contacts here, we can have their phone number, email, all that good stuff. Pretty straightforward. Sales resources. We have asset types like pricing plans linked here. So we don't actually have to type manually what the pricing plans are. They live natively here. We can look up values, roll up values, whatever the case is. Different use cases for being able to actually show on the spot within our CRM. This is exactly how another customer used us in the past, what their actual ROI was. But the meat and potatoes of this is really always going to be the opportunities section. And so within opportunities, you can see here, Sales Pipeline Master. I have a number of views that I'm going to touch on during this time, but we have, first and foremost, you can clearly see that we have different emojis at the top here. I think it's always really important to include some sort of eye-catching piece. It doesn't always have to be an emoji, but something that says, hey, this is an important thing. You're definitely going to want to fill this out. And so in this case, it's being able to clarify that these field types are ones that you are going to actually need to fill out in order to move across the next stage at some point. I've included stages here. We have a number of different stages from new, discovery, scoping, solution delivery, proposal. This is relevant to a user-based model in software SmartSuite, but Stages are for you to define, and you only, the account obviously is linked here, desired plan type, the forecast category, which I'll touch on more in a second when we get to our dashboard view, just allows the individual contributor to be able to communicate to leadership the confidence that they have in that specific opportunity actually getting across the line. And so if it's just in pipeline, it's there. We don't really know what's going on with it yet. And so that's relevant usually to new prior to discovery. You have best case, maybe 50%, most likely 75% commit, you're 95+%, and then blocked, something going on. You can even create an automation that as soon as it moves into blocked, your manager immediately is notified what's going on here. But one thing I really do want to highlight is this formula field that I put together. And oftentimes I've worked at companies in which I am filling out an opportunity and all of a sudden we make some sort of adjustment and I don't know which fields are now required in order for me to move into the next stage. And I'm guessing and checking going between them. I have nested if statements, fairly straightforward as far as how those are structured, that just clarify at each of these stages what needs to be done. And so I've called it helpful hints. So record close date and mark scheduled once ready for discovery, and that will automatically move us over. For the discovery phase, which I'll touch on in a second, built a discovery guide and activities. Good luck. For scoping, you need to gather plan type and user counts before proposal. In solution delivery, a nice little helpful hint, let's make sure we speak to value and not features. And then for proposal, oftentimes there's going to be sales ops has to review whatever kind of discount request, desired pricing. I'll touch on this in a moment, but having those helpful hints along the way for sales folks who are just moving a million miles an hour, obviously super helpful. Let me go into a couple of other views that we have here.
We have one question in the chat from Christopher Williams. He's wondering, so we have a solution template library, and we have a sales CRM solution in there. How different is this solution you're sharing today compared to that sales CRM solution?
That's a great question. Yeah. So as I walk through the structure of the data schema, it's somewhat similar. It's a lot more advanced in terms of automation. And so I'll get to it in a moment here, but essentially we have different holds for fields that are required. So if we're trying to move out of discovery and we don't have certain things clarified, it'll move us directly back into discovery. But this side interactions tracker that I have, and this is where I'll get into the planning as an individual contributor piece.
The structure of this solution here is the same as the sales CRM. You've just gone ahead and made it look a little different with more field types, automations, views. Is that correct?
Correct. I wanted to stick to somewhat of a standard sales CRM with a connected way of me being able to track my own interactions as an individual contributor, separate of what's happening here, using my own process, but still being able to update things. And a lot to show here on the dashboard. I could skip to the interactions piece. I do want to touch on a handful of things here, just as far as being able to pull insights from every single app across here, rather than just the one in each solution. For Friday forecasts, whatever the case is, I find that a lot of these insights would be super helpful, as well as just being able to view a standard grid. But without further ado, let's get into my opportunities and let's show how we can move things across the line. And for Emma's Emporium, if any of you have seen a webinar hosted by Emma, you know that she does not own a business called Emma's Emporium, but today she does. And what we're going to do here is, let's say for Emma's Emporium, it's a brand new op. It's a new, let's go ahead and say that we got our discovery meeting scheduled and it's going to be on May 12th. What that's going to do is a couple of things. It's going to automatically move my opportunity into the next stage. But more importantly, for myself and my own day-to-day, it's actually going to automate creating a record for me. And so this is something that I'm going to do for myself, right? Where I know exactly when the date of the interaction is. I have now gathered context from client. This same day, I'm going to reach out to them. Inevitably, on average, 2 days later, I'm going to have to remind them again to follow up for materials from the client. I'm going to confirm meeting the day before we actually have the meeting. And then I want to send the meeting follow-up directly after. in terms of being able to take notes and send the follow-up directly afterwards, I have a SmartDoc field populated automatically, dynamically with fields from the previous one. And so we have Emma's Emporium, discovery meeting, Emma Stunzer. So we always group things by current state, ideal state, what are the capabilities that are required to get there, what's the scope of the implementation, and what's the recommendation for next steps. I have here structured like, hey, or structured like an email, because I've also created an automation that says, once I have marked this as complete, and I say, okay, go ahead and send off this email. Because Emma is tied directly to here, I put my own email so that Emma didn't get bombarded with email communications along the way. It's going to actually take my live meeting notes that I put earlier and send it directly afterwards. I think one of the most painstaking parts of being a salesperson, especially one that's moving a million miles an hour, is I want to be able to take great notes on the call. I want to be able to understand everything that's going on, and I want to be able to just deliver that to my customer as soon as possible without spending 45 minutes trying to go to another place to be able to send that email. As we refer back over to Emma's Emporium op, I have this similar setup as we move along to every single stage, where it's going to create those interactions for me automatically and guide me through and give me different plans to completion with smaller tasks in between to be able to say, this is what needs to be done for this stage. This is what needs to be done for solution delivery. And the most compelling one, I think, is going to be once we get into the proposal piece. And so once we get into the proposal piece, we give it a second to be able to populate my new record.
And Jeff, just to make things very clear, how are these two solutions you're flipping between related?
Appreciate that. So this activity tracker is my own space to be able to track my interactions, but they're tied directly to each opportunity. And so I'm able to look up, roll up, get any information from the solution that is our sales CRM, while still having my own home and process as an individual salesperson to be able to automate various things, reminders. I have a million things going on. It's nice to be able to click on my work and see exactly what I have to do today and what I have upcoming. And the fact that it's automatically creating those tasks in here based on what I know usually happens in that stage is super helpful. Another piece is that, let's find Emma's Emporium for, let's say, this record right here. The moment we also mark these things into complete, you'll notice when you refer back to our op, Emma's Emporium, we look at this ongoing active notes. What it's doing is the moment that we mark our activities incomplete, it takes the value of what was already existing in our ongoing activity notes, adds a line break, and adds the next set of notes that we just included within our last interaction with Emma's Emporium. And so essentially making it a whole lot easier to be able to give leadership the insight that they need when they get into their CRM and they're wondering what's going on with this deal. They're seeing all of my live notes from every single call already here logged in automatically. Does that make it clear, Nate, in your mind as far as how the relationship is structured between interactions and opportunities?
It does. And so these consist in the same workspace. They're just two separate solutions you've linked, allowing information to be passed between the two.
And a lot that can be done here. Obviously, I think what I've seen a lot of people do is, especially if Salesforce is, if you're able to get reports and either spit them out as CSVs and import them with the record IDs, Salesforce record IDs, you're able to actually push those updates back if that's what you're usually operating out of. And so being able to create records in Salesforce for activities, being able to create new opportunities in Salesforce, but still just operating out of this free, flexible no-code space and structuring it in a way that's like visually appealing to you. I've seen numerous people do it and do it really well. And that's exactly what I'm looking to replicate here.
We have one question from Christopher asking, he says he doesn't have a sales background. Can you explain how the sales CRM would relate to contract project tracking? I.e., would you want to keep that in another solution, or would you want to link it to the sales CRM? Yeah, I think he's talking about contracts related to the opportunities.
This is very specific to, and every CRM should have the flexibility to be specific to somebody's motion, right? For yours, I would say that the contract and getting that in place is a definite prerequisite to moving it into closed one. So I would think that it would in the exact same solution.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, he's saying the transition of the sale to a contract. So I think it depends on your process, Christopher, when that contract or in your sales process, if the contract leads to that closed one, it should be in the same solution. But if there's a process that happens after that closed one deal, then it could be tracked in a different solution. See, we have some attendees raising their hand. Feel free to type your questions in the chat. Okay. Jeff is trying to find a simpler approach to capturing interactions for our salespeople. Having them in two different solutions is perhaps powerful, but not more intuitive. Excuse me. I'm thinking about eliminating the interactions table altogether. Is anyone successful using the comments feature to capture conversations in companies and contacts and opportunities? It's more intuitive, but less functional.
Yeah, it's a good point. I wouldn't say that this is always the most intuitive approach for the non-technical, but if you have a salesperson that enjoys creating automation and having that flexibility, and you as a sales leader have defined, like, if you can have, not just myself, I built this for demonstration purposes, but if you have everybody operating out of an interactions activity tracker, but this activity or this interactions app is also living within the CRM, I think it becomes a little bit more intuitive. Sorry, I shouldn't have opened the chat. Now I'm reading at the same time. It's a good question. So I'm thinking about, is anyone successfully using the comments feature to capture conversations in companies and contacts and opportunities? Jeff, can you clarify for me? Just mention, is there any thought on using email feature for each record rather than using automation for Smart Talk Field? So within each record, the email back and forth is powerful, but at the same time, as of right now, it's still coming from SmartSuite. And so for a lot of the people that I work with, they want an email to go out from their own Gmail or their own Microsoft Outlook. And so I actually have it going from Gmail, right? And it has a signature specific to myself. I've found a lot more people adopting that as of right now. Really what I'm excited about is when an email is received integration, because at that point, then you have an entire log picking up back and forth communication where you have a record for each of those email interactions. Until we get to that point, I also would think maybe even having another app in which it creates an email that goes out. A lot of ways to approach this, but I've found that for salespeople who want a personal touch, the email coming from a SmartSuite generic as opposed to their personal Gmail or their work Gmail, their work Outlook is preferable. Feedback I've gotten.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think it'd be cool to revisit that dashboard you created and just talk about how this relates to what you're seeing behind the scenes with regards to the data.
As far as open pipeline is concerned, it's filtered down to where a stage is not closed won or closed lost. Leaders can hop in here and articulate what their goal would be for the current quarter. A lot of times I'm seeing we care about getting the business, but it would be awesome to be able to drive the size of the opportunity. And then this quarter versus last, obviously, this is the exact same value as the value that we're seeing here. 100% quarter over quarter increase, but it's mostly because I built this in this quarter. But being able to track the way that you're building your pipeline quarter over quarter is really cool. Relational database no-code tools have the ability to be able to see the change over quarter in the way that this was set up natively, which I was really impressed with as I was building this out. And then all deals by forecast, or all deal forecast split up by the plan types here, donut chart to show who has actually closed the most so far. Nate, congratulations. You're absolutely killing it. 147K closed. Super proud of you. Time left in quarter. Nice little countdown for everybody to see at a moment's notice. And then these are all of our open ops in case anybody in leadership wants to, during a Friday forecast, click in to exactly what's going on and get an entire summary of it.
Yeah, that's a really good dashboard. Really encompasses the full sales process here. How can we access this amazing template with all of its automations? What we can do is when we post the recording onto YouTube, we can add a shareable link of that solution Jeff was talking about, and it will give you access to the structure and all the fields that you saw today. And then the automations won't come over, but our team would be happy to help you implement those and set those up.
Yeah. I could also send some screenshots of how I set each of these automations up as well, if that's going to be helpful for you.
It's been a great webinar, Jeff. Thank you for showing off capabilities. I'm sure it inspired a lot of people on what's possible, not just with sales, but in other processes as well. So thank you.
Thanks for having me, Nate. Appreciate it. Hope everyone has a good one.
Do more on sales. A lot of thank yous in the chat. All right. We will see you all later. Thanks for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your day.